How many now?
All right.
You're in trouble.
Is it over yet?
Welcome to Career Suicide here at the Daily Wire. I am the God King, Jeremy Boring. That's lowercase g, lowercase k, on the off chance any actual gods or kings are paying attention. For the next hour and a half, you're going to witness what is sure to be a train wreck as we
Please tell me this is going to last an hour.
Just who's going to feel that way anyway.
Here we are. It's the Daily Wire Backstage. You know the drill. We just sit around, smoke cigars, drink whiskey, try to look as pretentious as possible, and then fire Michael Knowles right at the end. Roll graphic.
You don't have to take that.
I don't need to take this.
No.
I
You do,
don't.
though.
I got real friends over
Yeah.
here. Right?
Did you really hire him?
Kind of a silly question. So.
All right, in all seriousness,
So does Sanders.
we're going to be taking questions from our Daily Wire subscribers. If you are not a subscriber, what's the matter you? Go to dailywire.com. Give us a measly $10 a month by hitting the subscribe button, and you can ask us questions, and we will make up answers. I'm going to introduce the roundtable here. We have, of course, Daily Wire editor-in-chief Benjamin Shapiro. We have host of the Andrew Klavan Show, Andrew Klavan, host of the Michael Knowles Show, Michael Knowles, and a very special guest who needs no introduction.
Alistair Cook.
Actually, we're very pleased to have our pal Glenn Beck with us, author of the brand new book, Addicted to Outrage, which is going to be, I think, kind of central to what we're talking about today, mostly because he paid through the nose for this marketing
Oh
opportunity.
my gosh, this is crazy. It's costing me. I will tell you that Stormy Daniels, has described the president's genitals in her book. I
I've heard
do
that.
have actual drawings of his supple nipples. So
Is that an exclusive?
it's an exclusive. It took me a while to draw them
Mario
out.
Kart
I'm like, Don,
characters.
wait, don't move.
It is,
Baby Luigi and Baby Mario.
before we dive too deep, I want to introduce the lovely, the talented, the lovely Elisha Krause. She's going to be taking your questions, so be nice to her. Elisha, are you with us?
Who killed Alicia?
Great to have you. Welcome to the Daily Wire Backstage, everyone. And in case you are not a subscriber, like Jeremy mentioned, I don't know what's wrong with you, and you're like, hey, how do I do that? Head over to dailywire.com and click on the subscriber button, because only subscribers can ask questions. It's a lot like our monthly conversations. So go over to dailywire.com, click subscribe. Cindy and I will be back here in the bunker, taking all those questions from our subscribers and toss them to the guys throughout the show tonight.
She looks more like Glenn than usual.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
I've never.
Like, that's a
it's
crappy
uncanny.
TV. Or you hire ugly women. No offense to ugly women.
We do not. Wait, can I? I'm not allowed to. That's all right. Obviously, the big story, and this is because Glenn, you're new to the conversation here with us. It's not really a news show. It's a bunch of guys.
Really? With the cigars and whiskey, I thought for sure this was hard news.
But I do think that whereas we usually sort of organize these around a specific set of ideas or a specific cultural event, I think that the news of the day actually is a pretty good place to tee up for a good philosophical conversation. That, of course, is what's going on with Brett Kavanaugh in the Senate confirmation hearings and these allegations coming up from 35 some years ago in his past, or I mean, maybe 35, maybe 36, maybe 37 years ago in his past, depending on at what point we buy into the story. Let's sort of overview the politics of it. Michael, if you want to take us through that, and then we'll maybe dive deeper into the things that are actually interesting.
Absolutely. So I think everyone who hasn't been watching the Mario Kart story all day has heard all of this, which is that this woman, Blasey Ford, who's a psychologist at a university in California, she is alleging that 36 years ago, she was at a party with a bunch of drunk guys, and Brett Kavanaugh was there, and he groped her, he tried to take her shirt off, and Mark Judge, who's another conservative, was also in the room. The first time she'd ever mentioned this was 6 years ago in a couples therapy session.
So 30 years later.
So 30 years after the fact. In that version, according to the therapist's notes, there were 4 guys in the room, and she didn't mention Brett Kavanaugh. So now, for the first time ever, at the 11th hour, after the hearings, after Kavanaugh could defend himself, this public accusation is made. The problem is it's not credible. And I think people are confusing these things, because when I say it's not credible, I'm not saying that she's lying. I don't know if she's lying. Yeah, maybe she said it, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen, maybe it happened differently, who knows. But at this hour, to derail a good man's career, a Supreme Court nominee, at the very second that they would be voting, would be ruinous to our political system.
You're saying it's not credible, not that it isn't true. That's a
Yeah,
different
I
standard.
suppose it could be true. Who knows? I mean,
It's more that it's unverifiable.
It's
There's
unverifiable.
no way in hell to verify this. She can't name the date. She can't name the time. She can't name the house. She
Right.
can't name the area.
Right.
So you're kind of stuck with some guys wrote me, and I say it's this guy, but there's no way to corroborate any of this. And the only other witness to the event, Mark Judge, says that it never happened. Dianne Feinstein came out today. She says she doesn't know if it's true. The Democrats refuse to have any hearings on this until, as they say, the FBI needs to investigate, as though the FBI are like the super secret police. They do the real Sherlock Holmes stuff. Like when you're really serious, you call the FBI. The regular cops you never call, even though this is a state crime, presumably.
Right.
But the FBI will use its magic DeLorean and go all the way back in time, and they'll sit outside with a pair of binoculars, just like in Back to the Future, actually.
Yeah.
And then they will check to see what happened. And the thing that is least credible about this is not even the story. It's the way the Democrats treated this. Dianne Feinstein had this letter July 30th. She did nothing about it for 7 weeks. And then she waited, and then she waited, and then she waited. She didn't tell Senate Democrats.
Yep.
She didn't tell anybody else in the Senate. She didn't tell the FBI. She didn't tell the White House. She didn't ask any questions of Kavanaugh in the hearings. She didn't ask any written questions of Kavanaugh. She didn't ask any questions of Kavanaugh in any phone calls with Kavanaugh. She waited until after all of this. And then she dumps a notice in public that there's an allegation that's anonymous, and she won't say what it is. And she does all that so that way this lady's forced into the public, and then she can say, well, it wasn't me. I didn't do it, right? I just said that there was an anonymous allegation. It was bad actors in the media who forced her to come out publicly. Dianne Feinstein is the worst sort of cynic. I mean, it's as disgusting a hit as when Harry Reid just suggested that Mitt Romney didn't pay his taxes with no other evidence.
No,
It really-
he did not suggest it.
He said
He
it.
got
He
a
said it.
phone call.
He got
That's
a phone
right.
call.
I got a phone call. Now it's out there. Mitt's got to answer for it.
And it worked.
And he
I
said-
mean, Drew, you were
He
saying
did.
this before the show.
And not only that, he said it worked. He said that's why he did it. I don't care what they
He
call
said
it.
after.
Afterwards.
After.
He said he didn't win, did he? You know, that's the solution. If that's your answer, then anything goes. And that's, to me, the worst thing about this is what it says we are going to become as a society. And I hate to talk about that, but that really is where it is, where we are going to say that if a man lives his entire adult life irreproachably.
So
But-
I want to have this conversation because this gets down to the heart of what's really interesting about all this. Not the immediate politics, but what does it mean about us as a people? But first, to quote a great man, we have to make some money, honey.
That's right. You're telling me.
I'm just kidding. It was Michael. Ben, you got to tell us about Robinhood.
Well, Robinhood is indeed the investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. They strive to make financial services work for everyone, not just the wealthy. So go check them out over at Robinhood.com. It's dailywire.robinhood.com. What makes them great is that the app works really seamlessly. It's really easy to use. We have one of the folks in our office who's been trying it out, and she says that it really is quite user-friendly. Other brokerages charge up to $10 per trade. Robinhood doesn't charge commission fees. You trade the stocks, you keep all of your profits. It's a non-intimidating way for stock market newcomers to invest for the first time with true confidence. Easy to understand charts, market data. You can place a trade in just 4 clicks on your smartphone, so it's really fantastic. Learn how to invest as you build your portfolio, and they have all these lists that they've curated for you, the top 100 stocks, entertainment stocks, stocks by CEO. It really is a user-friendly way to build your portfolio and learn to trade. So go check it out right now. If you go to dailywire.robinhood.com, Robinhood is giving listeners a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio. Again, sign up at dailywire.robinhood.com. That's dailywire.robinhood.com. Go check it out right now.
Why is it called Robinhood? I mean, it sounds like a lot of work. I mean, I just want him to steal money from the rich and give to me.
Give it to me.
You know, just that's what I want to
Even
do.
if you guys ever start paying me, I would do it myself. I would use Robinhood.
You
That'd be
would
terrific.
to steal
Yeah.
from people?
Yeah.
That would be great.
It's true. Theft.
You're not paying him, are you?
Knowles?
Not even
yeah,
once.
okay.
Not
For
even
what?
one
For
time.
what?
All right.
Do you think this bitterness comes from not paying him?
That could be it.
No, he's too stupid.
So, Drew, you bring up,
Yes.
I think, the deeper point, right? Which is, what kind of country do we want to live in? You've got an accusation that's 36 years old, that's, as we've said, not credible, can't be verified. And I happen to think that it is going to take Kavanaugh down. I think that the guy's not
no,
going
I
to be.
disagree with that. But,
No
but
way.
even if it were true, we are saying that a man can live his entire adult life in an unimpeachable way, a way that everyone around him respects him, speaks highly of him. But if he got drunk once when he was a kid in high school and maybe mauled a girl and maybe did something he shouldn't have done, he's now disqualified from serving the public. I mean, that disqualifies almost every male,
This
and
is-
probably a lot of females as well.
This is really abhorrent. We're talking about people, personalities, and politics. which one of us want to live in a nation where you can do something at 16, 17? Remember, we have juvenile court and sealed records because we believe in forgiveness and moving forward in your life. What you did when you were a teenager, even murder, isn't dragged up unless you start murdering people again.
Yeah.
Okay?
Those records get sealed.
Those records get sealed. Do you want to live in a country, left, right, doesn't matter who you voted for, that says, I'm one person, I have no evidence, it's just my word. Which one is either if you or me? Which one has more political clout? Which one's in the favorable the category of the media
backing them up,
right? Which one has the media? Which one can tell a more compelling story? And your life will be destroyed.
Yeah.
That's un-American. That's inhuman.
It creates a completely perverse incentive structure. Let's say that your incentive is that you actually want to punish people for the bad things that they do.
Right.
Well, normally what you would say is somebody tries to rape you, you go to the police take care of it, the person goes to jail. Now the incentive structure is such that you may be better off not saying anything. Like, I'm not saying this is what happened here. The woman was like lying in wait or anything. But the incentive structure that's now being created is if you really want to destroy somebody's life, the best way to destroy somebody's life if they do something bad to you when they're 17 is to wait 30 years, find out what they become, then say, this person did something bad to me, and you destroy legitimately their entire life. It's really...
The standards they're putting forward, they keep saying things, well, she's a credible witness. It's a credible story. Who cares? I can be credible. I've spent my life making up fiction.
Tom Hanks is credible.
Exactly.
I think he's fought World War II.
And I mean,
he's credible.
And I think we should be careful about the idea that nobody on the set is saying that she's lying. It's quite possible that she's misremembering. It's quite possible that memories get vaguer over time. It's possible that she met this guy once and she doesn't actually remember who it is, but somebody said, hey, isn't that Brett Kavanaugh? She looked up a yearbook photo and she said, oh, that looks like...
It's possible that it's true.
Right, it's possible that it's true. All of these things are possible. The problem is, it's our job as a public to try and determine what we know to be true and what we know to be false, or what we think is probably true or probably false, what you were saying yesterday, Glenn. And there's no way to determine probability based on this fact pattern. There's just no way to do it.
So this is the problem. There's the foundational and there's the urgent, right? We were talking about this a little bit earlier. The problem is that politics has reached a place in our country today where to attain the urgent or to answer the urgent, we tear away at the foundational. And so an example of this might be, in the current instance, we have things like due process for a reason because it protects justice for all people over time. But the Democrats see an opportunity to seize on an immediate political advantage for a situation which they would rightly see as urgent. The next justice on the Supreme Court is a major consideration, an urgent consideration, but it's far less important or foundational to the country than are we a nation of law or a nation of men, a nation of law or a nation of innuendo?
This is why, when Ben and I were pretty much alone for a while during the election, because we didn't think Donald Trump would do many of the things he has done, which are good. We just saw the downside. When you're standing there, is because, look, principles matter in the long run. Yeah. Ends don't justify the means. I don't want to live in Barack Obama or Donald Trump or Ronald Reagan's America that allows a person to be accused of something and stoned in the middle of the street. Right. We are so damn close to an American version of Sharia law where we're the woman or he's the woman that has been raped. Yeah. One woman will condemn you even if you have two other people testify. Doesn't matter. Her testimony is worth more than the man's.
Well, actually, this is actually an interesting point that I was thinking about, and I heard some folks over at Commentary magazine talking about this too, is this runs so counter to even basic notions of any sort of ancient law, including Islamic law. Yes. Like in Judaism, in Jewish ancient law, in Hammurabi's code, you need two witnesses to an event to actually convict somebody. Right? This is true in the Bible, it's true in Hammurabi's code, I believe it's true in Islamic law as well. The idea that you actually have to have witnesses to convict somebody, or at least how about some form of corroborating evidence, like anything. We don't even know where this was. She didn't tell anybody at the time. Like, there are certain factors that we can look at, like in Roy Moore's case, and say, okay, there's a bevy of accusers. There's a bunch of corroborating evidence as to where he was at a time. So we can at least say these other details of these stories are true. So it's more likely.
I do think this thing about the urgent versus the foundational, though, we can get a little carried away with that because that is almost the definition of politics, is balancing the urgent with the foundational. We're always doing that. The Civil War, do they really have the right to secede? We always have questions that are urgent. I think all of our problems at some level is we kind of have lost our faith that America itself has faith in the foundations. That, in other words, we're dealing with journalists who come out and say, if it's he says, she says, I believe the she. And you think like, well, wait, what about...
By journalists, you mean the conservative.
Yeah, Matthew Dowd. Howdy dowdy. And I mean, I just think that is the thing. We've got generations coming up that don't know what the Constitution is, let alone what it says. We've got people on the air every single day basically running down the foundations of the country. And I think when you say the urgent versus the foundational, I can deal with that, as long as it's the urgent versus the foundational, and the foundational still has
but you're concentrating on the foundational. I think the other problem here is that we have completely ratcheted up what exactly constitutes the urgent. Like we're living in the richest, we're living in the richest, most prosperous, freest country in the history of the world. And I mean, this is Glenn's book, right? I mean, we're beating the living crap out of each other on the assumption that it's justified to do that because this moment right now is so deeply urgent. And you can see this from the Kavanaugh hearings before any of this happened, right? You had Cory Booker going, this is my Spartacus moment, and Kamala Harris trotting out lies about Brett Kavanaugh and then having no way to back it up as far as him talking with members of Trump's law firm. This idea that we are one moment away from disaster, that perception actually brings about disaster faster than just recognizing where exactly we stand, because it turns everything into an urgent moment where all means are justified. Like we were talking about this earlier. I think it was Jeremy. It was Drew. You were posing me the hypothetical that when I was 15 years old, there were a bunch of guys in my high school who hit me with belts, like legitimately, like tied me down to a bed and hit me with belts. And you said, okay, well now it's 19 years later, and let's say one of those guys was up for a federal court hearing, and even he was on the other side. He was a Democrat. And he's spent the rest of his life being a solid citizen. Let's say he apologized to you. Would you come forward with that story? And my only answer was no, unless I thought the guy was legitimately Hitler, in which case I'd also be justified in shooting him, right? But the idea that you get to come forward with any bad thing you know about a person just because of politics, and that's the other part.
Can I ask you a question? Because I don't think I think I agree with you. Even if the guy is Hitler, well, that's what they think Brett Kavanaugh is. No. If the guy is still the bully that he was, if the guy is still in that pattern, not somebody who I think is Hitler, because they think Kavanaugh's Hitler. The guy, it's absolutely unjust to go after him.
On their urgency of it, aren't they making two simultaneous arguments? On the one hand, the left is saying abolish ICE, reform criminal justice. There's a movement on the left to have new, separate post-juvenile courts for 21-year-olds because they are not mature enough yet to be morally culpable.
So they should have the vote at 16.
That's right, but they should have the vote at 16, and if a guy
you should go into the Army at 18, right, but not come home and have the gun taken away because they're too irresponsible.
Because you can't have the gun, and then this guy at 17 is accused of trying to take a girl's shirt off, and it mars the rest of his life. That seems to me a real bizarre, counterproductive prioritization of the urgent over the arguments they're making.
I'm a little bit more torn on this than you guys. I'd like to get your opinion on it. Dennis Prager wrote a column today in National Review specifically about this topic, and he basically says, even if all of her allegations are true, I still don't want to penalize them. Well, let's say for a second that all the allegations were true, and it happened objectively, exactly as she said.
And the allegation is what?
Let's go with the allegation.
Right, so the allegation in her letter is that he and Mark Judge, she was coming upstairs, and it was at a pool party, and they were all drunk, and that he and his friend pushed her into a room, shut the door, turned the music up really loud. He jumped on top of her, tried to remove her clothes, and then when she tried to scream, stifled her screams with his hand before Judge jumped on his back or something, and then she escaped the room. That's the actual allegation.
Stop. Now, you're an attorney, so you would know. In Maryland, there is felony. There's a felony assault, and then there is misdemeanor sexual assault. Which one is that?
I'm not a Maryland attorney, so I don't know. In California, that'd probably be a misdemeanor sexual assault.
Okay. Misdemeanor has 1 year. 1 year you have to report it in.
Statute of limitations.
Yeah. So you have statute of limitation 1 year. If it's felony, it keeps going. If you're describing that as the act, it's 1 year.
But your question more specifically is, if we have video and we knew it was true, should it disqualify him from being on the bench? And I would say no.
Yeah.
And this goes to a fundamental question of can we live in a graceless society? Can we live in a society where men are responsible for the misdemeanor crimes of boys? If he had raped her, I agree that those would be sealed records. I agree that would be that the statute of limitations doesn't apply for an actual rape. I would still, as an individual, look at someone and say, man, if 35 years ago you did even the worst thing, I have a certain kind of grace for you, but you did disqualify yourself from ever serving on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Right? We would all agree.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Can't be on the Supreme Court. If what the guy did is as she describes it, the problem with what she describes is, I suspect, she's drunk, he's drunk, and we have to assume certain motives to him. It's very possible that what happened is something along the lines of what she suggests, but they thought they were roughhousing. We don't know what happened right before this or right after. We don't know what kind of relationship they had leading up to this moment from the charges at hand. It's very possible that they were doing something for which, if I were her older brother, I might have gotten in a fist fight with one of these guys. But it can't be the case that you can't build a society that says if a guy fumbles around with a girl for a minute, does things that probably deserve him getting punched in the mouth, doesn't do things that cross into being felonious, doesn't do things that cross into rape, which is at best a
Totally
perception that she has
Yeah.
in her mind, not something that we can say is evidenced just by their actions. In that world, I think no one currently serving in the United States Congress or Senate would have their job. No man. If
But
Certainly not.
And you know,
Absolutely.
going back to what Knowles said about the contradictions in their values, we're not the ones who, for the last 20 years, have been selling women the idea that promiscuity is empowering. We're not the ones who said that sexuality is just putting a cartoon mushroom in a hole. You know, we're not the ones who said this stuff didn't
That
matter.
was disturbing coming from you.
All day long.
Would have been equally disturbing
all
coming
day,
from
all
me.
day long in my head, I just dum 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 dum. I feel bad. I don't know. But you know, it is this thing that they set up where women were supposed to be the same as men sexually, and now suddenly, you know, even the other day they put out that video of Harvey Weinstein, who I think we all would agree is a true piece of garbage, right? Saying to this girl in a business meeting, you know, do you mind if I flirt with you? He puts his hand on her.
So horrible.
On her. It's so horrible.
me
And
get
yet
a
at the
piece of
same
that.
time, it's horrible because we're gentlemen. It's not, if she's a feminist, she's responsible for herself. If we believe what
Because
the
he
feminists
asks,
say, he
and
asks.
she says yes.
And
That's
when he
right,
puts his
that's
hand, she says that's a little high, but she doesn't say,
Again-
get your bloody.
Again, in that particular case, watching that video, I empathize with her.
Me too, because
because
we're
it's
gentlemen.
Harvey Weinstein. You're company.
George-
You walk out.
George
you
Clooney,
blow
it's
it.
okay.
No. But you walk out. You're thinking to myself, I've got to do this deal. My company wants me to do this deal. Let me just plow through this.
Yeah, you know,
and so you put up with some stuff, and I feel bad for her. She shouldn't have to.
You know, I'm
Well, I
gonna
agree with
push
that.
back on you guys just a little bit here because I think that the original kind of way that I set up the question is God's eye view. What she's saying is exactly true. So her ascription of motive is correct. Everything is right. If that's the case,
What
then
you're saying
at,
is-
at a certain point,
You're
do
saying
what-
God only knows.
Well,
If
right,
God
right,
knows that
but-
he attempted to rape her.
But I think that what the left wants to do is basically say that even that the right would be okay. What the left wants from this conversation, and this is why they've picked this case, is they want the right to say that no matter what she claims, the right would be okay with it, right?
No.
And that of
No,
course is
no,
not
no,
true.
that's-
But I guess the question that I'm asking is, let's say that everything were just as she said that it was. And we're not going to try and recast it into the fog of memory or the perception of he said, she said. It just happened exactly like she said it did, and her description motive was correct. I'm not sure I could let that guy sit on the Supreme Court without an act of actual repentance. Really, because
Well,
if
this is one of
it's
the
rape
things-
or if it's murder, presumably, if the person never made restitution for it, you would not be okay.
well, if the
with
person raped or
burying
murdered,
it.
I
This
wouldn't
is
be
one of the-
okay.
I wouldn't be
if he
okay
did.
even
One
if
of
he
the
did
things
say
I
yes.
admire about the Democrats, they are slimy, but they have actually maneuvered Kavanaugh into a position where there is something at stake. He has denied it. He said, I think he has.
He said he didn't go to any party
He
like
didn't
that,
go
yeah.
to the party. In this case, if he's lying now,
He's done, yeah.
That's disqualifying. And you know,
right.
Susan Collins said that. She was absolutely right. So good on the Democrats. They stink. They have no morals. They're hypocrites. They're slimy as can possibly be. But it worked. It actually put him in a position where
seems to
he's
me-
done something that would be disqualified.
Like it seems to me that if he went to her and apologized at any point or demonstrated that he had some
he
sort of remorse, like it's a real question about it's a question about restitution and remorse. Actually, it's a more general question than just
But
this
I-
case.
but
what
I-
does
You
somebody
might
have
be
to
thinking
do?
about this because of where you're
Yom
going
Kippur,
to
right? I'm about to go atone in about an hour and a
but
half here.
I think you're right that he might want to atone for that. He might want to, but also, you know, I'm an alcoholic. One of the things you have to do is you have to go to apologize to everybody, unless it brings up more pain and destroys things.
Right.
Okay. So maybe he's atoned for this, et cetera, but by admitting this at the time, going to her might have caused more pain for his wife, might have brought up bad things for her. I don't know what the situation is. But you could say, as long as he has lived his life as a man who obviously learned, if he did this, don't ever do that again. Are you living a good, decent, solid life? If the guy's kind of a scumbag, the guy kind of plays it loose and,
So which crimes fall into the area of the, I mean, I know we're getting into sort of deep philosophical waters, but which crimes fall into the category of the unforgivable, even if there is remorse that took place?
Before we get to this, I do want to point out that we are placing a hypothetical on top of an unfalsifiable claim that he denies.
Yes.
So when we ask why
put out for political reasons.
My question is not about Kavanaugh at this point.
Yeah,
we all agree on the situation.
I just wanted to be clear that he didn't apologize for a thing he says he didn't do is not disqualifying.
But I'd put it back to you, because one of the things that youth is for is learning to be an adult. And you don't learn to be an adult by reading a book about it. You learn through failure. You learn through, I suspect that if we were to look back at any of our early lives with much...
Let's just use because this is a real thing and involves you. Mm-hmm. The two guys that beat him with belts, tied you to a bed and beat you with belts. I don't know what school you're going to, but what happens there apparently stays there.
That's School of Hard Knocks.
It's an Orthodox Jewish day school, actually.
That's freaky. That's the weirdest, scariest story I've heard. So
terrible.
So let's just use that one because that's real. Okay,
right.
Go ahead.
So, if that's
you just said
I wouldn't want to ruin their life over that.
Correct. Would you feel that they were qualified? Have either of them come to apologize?
Yes.
Both or one?
One.
Okay. The other one, do you know him?
Yeah, I've seen him around, yeah.
Okay. Is he a decent man?
Okay. All right. I wouldn't want him on the Supreme Court, but yeah.
Okay, so that's the deal. If he was qualified to be on the Supreme Court, but you were like, no, I would say something because he hasn't learned.
Yeah.
But if he was a decent, honorable man, and he was qualified for the Supreme Court...
But I'll be honest with you, I treat my own, my own situation differently than I would treat the mistreatment of a girl. I just do.
Sure.
I mean, call me sexist, but the guys hitting me with belts I don't think is the same thing as if somebody tried to take my sister to a bed, shove her on a bed, jump on top of her, rip off her clothes, and put her hand over her mouth.
Well, I'd
probably go kill that guy.
It's very
probably.
chivalrous and sexist in today's world. I agree with you, but...
No, but 35 years later, I'd hold one hell of a grudge, right? I do think that's what... there are gradations of crimes, and I'm trying to figure out kind of where to draw the line, because we all agree that on rape and murder, obviously,
of course,
it doesn't matter what the person did for the next 20 years. They could be Mother Teresa the next 20 years.
The funny thing is our legal system basically reflects what heretofore has been our values on this, which is you say rape and murder as though that's obvious. But it's obvious because, yes, as a society, we have said there aren't statutes of limitation on these crimes.
We have said if you're 17 or 16 and you murdered, that's sealed.
Yeah.
That's sealed. So our society has said if you are 16, so if somebody raped and murdered somebody, paid their debt, that record was sealed, should those records be unsealed for a Supreme Court justice 40 years later?
Well, paid their debt is really the question. Right, and this is what I'm getting back to in terms of repentance and atonement. And again, I'm in that mindset. The prison sentence is partially to atone for the crime. So let's say the person wasn't caught. Let's say it was Teddy Kennedy and he was 17 instead of being 35 and a senator. And he was 17 and he drove a woman off a bridge. And then he spent the next 30 years being a nice guy. Yeah. Like, would I say that guy should be able to sit on the Supreme Court or sit in the Senate? I'd say no.
Yeah, of course.
I'd say no. But if the guy had done the time and learned from his mistake, then that does change. I think atonement does change the equation, but I'm not sure. I guess what it comes down to is I'm not sure that better behavior in the aftermath of a sin is the complete scope of atonement.
Can I move this conversation just a little bit, though?
You can't.
Yes, I must.
You can.
Yes.
But not until we do an ad read. Because we are 10 minutes late. 10 minutes late talking about stamps.com.
Our former advertiser.
Does California have to wreck everything?
Yes.
I just asked for a little juice box. Fruitables? Fruit and vegetables? I don't want vegetables.
Well, we weren't going to say anything about this plan, but,
Fruitables not our sponsor.
Right. Stamps.com is indeed our sponsor. And Stamps.com, you love all the services the post office provides, but you don't actually want to get in the car and go down to the post office and wait in line. Well, you can now get all the great services of the post office from your desk because you can print the postage directly onto your mail. You have a scale, they'll weigh it exactly for you, and then you just print it directly onto the envelope, onto a sticker, onto a piece of paper. You tape it to the actual mail, and you're good to go. You put it in the outgoing mail. You just saved yourself an enormous amount of time. You click, you print, you mail, and you're done, and it's all available, obviously. It's online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Stamps.com will even send you that digital scale so you can weigh those letters and packages, make sure that you have exact postage. We use Stamps.com here at the Daily Wire offices. It saves us enormous amounts of time, and it does save us money because it costs money to spend time going to the post office. Go check it out right now and use promo code Shapiro for this special offer. Stamps.com, promo code Shapiro, 4-week trial, including postage and a digital scale, which is a pretty solid deal. Go to Stamps.com before you do anything else. There's a radio microphone at the top of the page. Click it, type in Shapiro, Stamps.com, and you enter that promo code Shapiro. Again, you get a 4-week trial, which includes postage and a digital scale. Pretty awesome deal just for saving money anyway. So go to Stamps.com and use that promo code Shapiro. Save yourself some time and save yourself some money. You get all the great services of the post office from your desk.
And also, if you like our Daily Wire podcast content, Stamps.com is one of our absolute best sponsors.
Oh, they're terrific sponsors. So if you enjoy the content that we bring you, make sure that you help out our sponsors by letting them know.
I just like watching the envelope go into my printer and come out with a stamp.
That's right.
That's like, I go, wow.
And I got to tell you something. One time I tried to send a letter without putting a stamp on it. Didn't work.
Doesn't do a damn thing.
Didn't work at all. Yeah.
Drew also likes color television. I cut you off. I want you to say what you wanted to say, and then we got to check in with you, Alicia.
Okay, you bring up Teddy Kennedy, and Glenn has written this book, Addicted to Outrage. And part of our addiction to outrage is that we're caught in this kind of Greek tragedy cycle of revenge. For years and years, we have been watching the left. The lion of the Senate drove a woman into the drink, left her there while he changed his clothes and set up his alibi. Bill Clinton, we told that what a Puritans we were. Ken Starr, he was the witch finder general. And now suddenly this kind of ephemeral charge about something that happened 36 years ago is supposed to derail a man's entire career. And it does make you think, I'm sorry, but it does somewhere inside me, I just think, you know what? Take your Bill Clinton and take your Teddy Kennedy and take your John F. Kennedy and get stuffed, pound sand. Because how can we play by the Marquess of Queensberry rules when they are coming at us with an axe?
Right.
I agree with the general sentiment, but I think that it's an argument that proves too much, as they would say in law school, right? Because that puts Roy Moore in the Senate. Really, I mean, it's an easy. It's too much.
Hearing will be a lot easier. Not to defend Mr. Moore.
And again, I mean, all of the conversation that we're having really has nothing to do almost with Kavanaugh, because as I would like to reiterate, when it comes to Kavanaugh, we all agree the evidence just isn't there for any of this, and this looks like a scurrilous last-minute attack on baseless grounds,
right?
At least unverifiable grounds.
Looks suspiciously like a scurrilous.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Alicia, are you with us, or did you go home? Because we are so late checking in with our Daily Wire subscribers and hearing from them.
I know. And I mean, guys, if you're wondering, how do I get Alicia to read my question? Then you need to become that subscriber. So head over to dailywire.com, click the subscriber button over there. And if you are currently a subscriber, we do thank you. And we thank you for your great support. And we hope that you enjoy that Leftist Tears tumbler, because we all know it's much better than a mug.
No. Now,
to be fair,
the Louder with Crowder acrylic mug, which can be yours for $10 a month, I think, is a superior repository for ash. There's no question about it.
That's what it's
I
made
like
for.
to find my ashtrays at garage sales, preferably from the mid-century, but okay. So we are rolling through those subscriber questions. So thank you to all of our subscribers that have submitted some. First, we have a question for Glenn. Anthony talks about how Mr. Beck's new book is about how division in our country can lead to the downfall of everything that we have accomplished. As a college student, Anthony wants to know, what is something that he can do to bridge the divide?
I think we need to separate ourselves from the political world in the first place. Take off the team jersey. I am, everybody sitting here on this Kavanaugh thing, if the accusation was rape and they had evidence, every single one of us would be saying, Kavanaugh's got to go.
Yep.
He's got to go.
Judge Barrett, let's do it.
We do not have a team jersey. You have your principles. We have to start taking the team jerseys off and then looking at the bigger principles. Should Alex Jones be taken off? No, he shouldn't be. We shouldn't be deplatforming people because we believe in freedom of speech. Should you be chased off of campuses? No. We believe in freedom of speech. And what's more, do you want to pay an exorbitant amount of money to go and have somebody feed you a bunch of nonsense? Or would you rather have a university experience take you and throw you up against the wall and offend you in 100 different ways to get you to think? That's what we want. So we just have to stop defending and slinging mud and talking about the little things. Start talking about the bigger things, because I really think the floodgates are opening. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with this election, but I have this feeling, and I don't know if you guys have it either, but I've talked to enough people around the country, and I had dinner last night with a guy who would blow your frickin' mind that we were even on the same block. He sat in my house last night and said, I can't even talk to my own party anymore. Okay? This is a guy who's currently in the mix. I can't even talk to my own party. I don't know how to bridge this anymore. And I want to talk to you because maybe you can help me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You know,
Barack, calm down there.
Right, Barack. It's almost that. It's almost that.
Yeah.
But the point is, he went off for 10 minutes, you know, not on a comedic diatribe, but sincerely saying, the line is moving every day. And the line is moving, and it's moving in a scary direction. Michael Reckenwald, who we were talking about earlier today, he's a guy from NYU. He described himself, I love this, as a libertarian communist. Okay? I asked him, what the hell is a libertarian communist? He said, kind of a theoretical kind of thing, that, you know, if we ever get power, we would do it right. He's out at NYU. His story is absolutely incredible. He is now saying, look, I took this as, hey, we want to make a better world. He said, I'm watching my friends and I'm watching the universities. He said, they will end up killing people. And he said, we're on the road that communism goes all the time. There are people in the country that have had enough of it. But somebody said to me last week, I was on some show, and I said something positive about President Trump. And it was on the guy who was, you know, taking papers off the president's desk. And I said,
Anonymous. I believe
Anonymous,
right?
Yeah. So that guy. So I said, you know, we elected a president. I got hammered online because I said, we elected a president.
Yeah.
Well, Glenn, who the hell do you think you are? We elected him, not you. Excuse me. When the president is elected, we elected Barack Obama.
Yeah, that's right.
He's supposed to be our president. But the point on this was, here's a guy who was against this president in the election, who now comes on, honestly says, look, I still don't like this, this, and this, but I got to hand it to him on this, this, and this, and I'll defend him on that. Yeah. And the core comes back and says, we don't want you? That's insane. Yeah. We have to come at principles and welcome people. Welcome. We don't have to agree on everything.
No, but you know, I hate to say this because everybody blames the media. I blame the media. I think when you have a mainstream media that is really a monopoly of the left, this is a wholly owned subsidiary of the left, and for 30, 40 years it has been basically telling the middle of this country, you stink, your culture stinks, your religion stinks, your politics stink. And then they suddenly say, why is everybody so angry? Why, you know, what do you mean we're enemies of the people? But they are. They're not enemies of the people. They're enemies of the Republicans.
They're enemies of truth, I think.
And they're certainly enemies of truth. I mean, they have bathed themselves in disgrace for the last year at least. And I think when you have that situation, how do we reach out beyond them and talk to one another? Because the people that we're hearing from are all on one side and all hysterical.
Here's the good news.
Please.
Did anybody notice? Did anybody notice that the shares of Tesla dropped because the chairman or the president was on an internet show? Okay? Joe Rogan, when he had Elon Musk on, that was, to me, the official turn. Because the media doesn't know. The media doesn't know about you guys. The media doesn't know or care about my audience on The Blaze. They don't care about CRTV. They don't care about any of it.
Every so often they kind of pipe in to say that they're going to look at the curiosity at the zoo.
Yeah.
Right. They'll stop by for like one story.
And that's great. Keep looking at us as zoo animals because we've passed them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm introducing this book for the very first time. I'm doing no mainstream media.
Right.
None.
That is good news. That actually is good
It
news.
is.
Yes, because it really is. It really has been like the American Revolution. We've been shooting at them from behind the trees. They've been an empire,
And it's also
we're winning.
And it's all young people who are watching the internet, too,
Right.
so it's a different generation.
Right.
People who are 50 and up don't even understand this concept, but they're not watching this right now.
I keep saying to my audience, stop giving the media power. Then Simon & Schuster says, okay, you want to go on The View? You want to go? No!
Yeah, why would I
I'm not
ever
going to
want
give them power.
But please, can you book me on The View?
You know what? We actually talked about this.
talked about this.
I'd book myself on The View, and then
I
he'd
would
go
show
in.
up.
I was sick.
Ben's going to pitch the book.
This is where the goatee.
When I'm praying on Yom Kippur, there are very few things I'm going to be praying for. That in this upcoming year, please God, let me be on The View.
Yeah.
Alicia.
I'm still here, still got some great questions. Spencer wants to know, if the apocalypse were to happen today, which book would each of you try to preserve?
Addicted to Outrage by
That was the only one.
available
Wow.
today.
Is that a pal? Is that a pal or
No,
not?
that's not a pal. He means
No,
it.
he does. Okay.
He doesn't even
Yeah,
like me.
yeah.
I'd bet money that we all come up with the same book. At least the first half of the same book.
You got to try
And
the
Glenn will
sequel,
come up
though.
with
It's
another
real.
sequel.
Yeah, Episode 3.
Wait a minute. Can I just ask you something? The apocalypse happens, and we're grabbing a book?
Yeah, I don't know why y'all wouldn't be coming to the
Glenn,
Krause
I'm a
house,
Jew. We
'cause
do this
I'm-
every couple of years. Right? Yes. That is literally the outline of my people's history.
Every
The
50
apocalypse
years or
happens
so.
and we grab a book. That is the...
Krause House is the place to go in the case of a zombie apocalypse.
That's right.
I'm just saying, I'm going to have my chicken coop, and the only reason I have a rooster is so I can keep eating chickens and not just the eggs. I got the
I am
guns.
now going to make my second shameless plug of this question. One question, 2 shameless plugs. It's a 90-minute show. I listened to the Lady Brains podcast recently over at ricochet.com, and I heard Alicia have a very compelling argument about the raising of chickens and quail.
Yes.
And it was fine. It was edifying. It was wonderful. Then came the part where Alicia said, my big problem today as one who raises urban chickens is the hipsters who have ruined urban chicken coops for all of us. And I thought, physician.
Thanks for that.
see
We have
the
lots of fun
article?
over there.
Do you see the article in Silicon Valley? People are now paying up to $15,000 for a chicken coop.
Come on.
Really?
And here's the best. And if anyone is looking for a job, just hear me now. They are paying $350 an hour
See ya.
for chicken counselors.
Really? How much?
People to come and say, you don't understand your chicken. Your chicken is feeling this way.
How much
You
is-
Alicia
just-
has never paid more than $125.
How much does the fryer cost?
You won't stop complaining.
Drew stole my joke. No.
Alicia, we got time for one more question.
I think we do. I think we have a question now from Evan, if we get it up here on the teleprompter real quick. And he wants to know about some of the movies, because I think all of you guys really like movies. Michael, of course, is a big fan of the late movie past, R.I.P.
R.I.P.
He says, do you view Michael Corleone as a villain? And also wants to say thank you for all that everyone does there, except Knowles. So, new favorite subscriber.
That seems fair.
First,
Yeah,
I
that's
would
right.
like to say, when we're talking about Michael Corleone, that was my father, Kay. That's not me. That's not me, Kay.
That's very good. That's very good.
Big man! That was a different movie. That wasn't that
I didn't know he could do anything.
From early Pacino to late Pacino in 30 seconds right there.
Well, yeah, it is. I have a movie story that's kind of funny, which is that when I was like 21 or 22, I stood in line for 12 hours to shake hands with Bill Clinton, the former president of the United States. And he had been my president, and I was coming of age, and he had this book out, and I lived in LA, and I was poor, and I had nothing to do. And one of my pals said, if we stand in line for 12 hours to meet Bill Clinton, and he signs our book, that crap goes for like $500 on eBay. And so we stood in the line to get our book signed. I still have mine, by the way.
This wasn't very long ago if you were talking about eBay.
I couldn't bring myself to
Kind
do
of a
it.
shameful
This
story.
was around 2014, 2015.
Yeah, last week.
So it's me and my pal who will remain nameless because he actually has a career, probably doesn't want to be associated with this. We stand in line and we're thinking, what are we going to say to the president when we meet him? And I wanted to make a joke about how long his book was, and I wanted to compare it to that book that we would all save in the apocalypse. And so I was going to say, the good book isn't much longer, Mr. President, but when I got up there and I looked into those piercing Bill Clinton eyes, and I was shaking hands with Bill Clinton, I said, good Lord, this book's not much longer, Mr. President. And he actually looked at me like we were going to have a fist fight. He was like, I don't know what you just said, but don't come at me, bro. And then my pal comes up behind me and tries to salvage the moment. His question was going to be, I understand you are a movie buff, Mr. President. What is your favorite movie? And what comes out of his mouth when he glances at the president is, so what's your favorite movie buff? To which Secret Service puts a hand on his shoulder and pushes him along. And Bill Clinton calls out after us as we're being escorted from the premises. It says, High Noon. I tell you why in the book.
Great film, I have to say.
Good thing you didn't approach him with a cigar. It might not have ended well.
Great film, whether you're left or right.
Yes, it is a great film. It
Although
was made for the left.
It's interesting. There's a right-wing critique of High Noon. And the right-wing critique it comes from the folks over at the Claremont Institute who actually contrast High Noon with The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. The sort of critique goes that the problem with High Noon is that it basically suggests there is no such thing as civic virtue. That nobody in the city is willing to help the sheriff, that the only person who's willing to do anything is the one guy, and the one guy is what saves the civilization. And they object to that. They basically say that you actually need, as in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, the entire town basically coming together at a certain point in order to save civilization.
This is why conservatives don't understand culture. It doesn't matter what the film says. It's a great story.
Well, I don't think they're ripping on the quality of the film. It's a great film.
But I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, look at,
Winston Churchill.
Look at Churchill. Look at Bonhoeffer.
Yeah.
Bonhoeffer is such a remarkable man, standing up all by himself. Didn't win, and most people are afraid. Most people, the whole town. It takes a special time. Look at Poland. Lots of people stood up. I talked to the chief rabbi of Poland, and he said, there are more righteous among the nations in Poland than any other country.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the number was, 7,000 Christians or something like that stood up. And I said, what was the population of Poland again?
Yeah.
7,000 is pretty small.
Yeah.
He looked at me, and it was such a bizarre experience because I'm thinking that's little. And here's the chief rabbi, and he says, do you realize what it took for those people?
Yeah.
And he's right.
Yeah, it's not as much fun when it's not happening in fantasy.
Right, and you look at
life.
people now. How many people are really willing to stand up to their own tribe, are willing to stand up in their own office, are willing to stand up in Google and say, excuse me, but we're not deplorables. I am a conservative, and I'm not ashamed of it.
You're
and
fired.
Stop treating me this way.
Send my severance package to the car that I parked in.
Right. They're not willing to do something that simple. So when things get hard,
it is true that we all like to think of ourselves as the person who would stand up and do something, but the truth is, virtually no one would stand up and do something.
That's right.
I mean, we play this little game in the Jewish community pretty often, which is who's the good Gentile, right? Like the Nazis come, whose house do you go to?
Yeah.
Basically. And
not mine. Please do not come to mine.
Right, exactly.
I don't know him.
Thanks for that. I mean, you got a big house. You could hide me safely in that 1,000th bedroom. And
I tell you, this is because you can't predict how you're going to act in those situations.
Right.
Especially if you haven't, courage is a muscle. And if you haven't done all the work along the way,
That's right.
I mean, I took my family to Auschwitz, and my kids are just so screwed up. They're got years of therapy for them. I took them to Auschwitz, and I said, this is 7-8 years ago. I said, I want you to decide who you are today. I made each of them pick a righteous among the nation. They had to read a book about that person and look into it and really think about it and then make the decision. Because if you're not living your life that way when it's easy, you'll never make it when it comes time to actually hide somebody.
Interestingly, when they study the people who actually did save people, they had all had an experience before where they had failed to do it. They had almost all of them had an experience, one experience where they had failed to do it.
Which kind of goes to our core conversation.
And
you
then they go
learn
back.
from failure, you don't learn from
Yeah.
Elisha, thank you for the questions. If you'd like to get in another question and you're watching us right now as a Daily Wire subscriber, send it in. If you're not a Daily Wire subscriber, we want your money. DailyWire.com/subscribe. Give us a measly $10 a month. You will get the beautiful Leftist Tears hot or cold Daily Wire tumbler. You will get the Ben Shapiro Show, the Andrew Klavan Show, the Michael Knowles Show, and you will get to ask us a question before the end of today's broadcast. maybe. I mean, we're not doing very well keeping a clock, but we're going to do our level best. In the meantime, Benjamin.
Well, let's talk about your Second Amendment rights, okay? As somebody who, we just went through the great horrors of history, having a gun is one of the things that prevents this sort of stuff from happening. An armed population prevents this sort of stuff from happening. You know, it's not just people like me who believe this. It's also the folks over at Bravo Company Manufacturing. It was started in a garage by a Marine veteran more than 2 decades ago to build a professional-grade product that meets combat standards because BCM believes the same level of protection should be provided to every American, regardless of whether they're a private citizen or a professional. BCM is not a sporting arms company. They design, engineer, and manufacture life-saving equipment, which is the stuff I care about. I'm not a hunter, right? I'm not somebody who goes sport shooting. I'm somebody who I want to protect my family. That's what I care about. I want to protect my civilization. BCM makes those kinds of weapons. They assume that each rifle leaving their shop will be used in a life-or-death situation by a responsible citizen or a law enforcement officer or a soldier overseas. Every component of a Bravo Company manufacturing rifle is hand-assembled and tested by Americans to a life-saving standard. BCM feels a moral responsibility as Americans to provide tools that are not going to fail the user when it's not just a paper target. God forbid you actually have to use a gun against somebody else. You don't want it to fail. To learn more about Bravo Company Manufacturing, head on over to bravocompanymfg.com. There you can discover more about their products, their special offers, their upcoming news. I've talked to the folks who run it. They're really spectacular people, and their product is just great. It's bravocompanymfg.com. Find out even more about Bravo Company Manufacturing and the awesome people who make their products at youtube.com/Bravo Company USA. That's youtube.com/Bravo Company USA, bravocompanymfg.com to check out their products.
So we've strayed into culture, and I feel we should stay here. And typically when we talk about culture, we're always talking about it through a negative light. It'd be pretty easy to go to the Emmys last night. We would probably camp out there for the rest of the show because Hollywood just provides endless fodder for this sort of thing.
I've heard that God is a her. That's what.
And she is.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I actually want to talk about things that we like in the culture right now. Like you've got 5 guys here, all who spend as much time thinking about culture and entertainment as we do thinking about politics. We just talk about it a lot less. What are you watching right now? What are you listening to right now? What's got your attention? Let's kind of go round robin here and.
Well, I've actually been watching some old series because I watched some of the new series and some of them were decent. I thought Ozark was okay on Netflix. But the one that I've been watching, I went back and I was rewatching Rome, which I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, from HBO.
Two seasons.
Two seasons.
Our
really
friend Bill
good.
Whittle's favorite television show.
Yeah, and except for the typical, it's HBO, so we have to put boobies on the screen. And on Amazon, you now have the ability to skip forward 15 seconds in a row, so you just get flashes of pornography as opposed to entire scenes of pornography, which for some people is the benefit and for some people is the drawback.
I click pause.
Yeah, exactly. But the show is really good, and it takes you from essentially Caesar re-entering Rome and crossing the Rubicon all the way up to the Battle of Actium, and it's really quite good. I've really been enjoying rewatching that. Also, my wife and I started watching the new Jack Ryan series on Amazon.
Oh, how is it?
How many are you in? I only watched 1 and I was a little sleepy.
3.
Does it get better?
It does get better.
Faster?
It does get better. The first half of the first episode is very slow.
Yeah, very slow.
And then once they get him actually in the action,
Right.
then it does change the series radically. They do the thing that Hollywood always does. Well, so first of all, the good thing about the series, aside from the fact that it's actually showing law enforcement in a good light, which is nice, is that the villains in the series are actual Islamic terrorists. Like actual.
You will find by the end of the series that it's some oil guy
Yeah,
in Texas that's setting it all
I don't
up.
think so because they're spending an awful lot of time with the terrorists. Like, if they humanize the terrorists a little bit, they're going to spend a lot of time with them. So the one conceit this series engages in, and this one really drives me nuts, and it's something that Hollywood does for dramatic purposes, is they basically say, well, this terrorist became a terrorist because of something bad that happened to him when he was a child, right? Yeah. Some Westerner did something to his family, and that's why he became a terrorist. And it's like,
that's how this starts.
Go look at terrorists. I'm sorry, that is not correct. If you look at the sociological data about terrorists, a huge number of them are middle class to upper middle class, came from homes that were middle class to upper middle class, were well educated. People join terrorist groups because they agree with the ideology, not because something bad happened to them in their youth. Most people had something bad happen to them in their youth, and they didn't pick up a gun and start shooting people for no reason. So it's that is annoying about the series, but it is well made, and it does take the problem of Islamic terror at least 75% seriously. I mean, there's a terrorist attack that's pretty egregious that they show in episode 3 that is heavily linked to radical Islam, and they don't shy away from it.
The truth is, after A Quiet Place, I'll follow Krasinski through the gates of hell.
Right.
Yeah,
That
was terrific. That was
He's
terrific.
fantastic.
Krasinski is a shockingly talented individual.
Yeah.
Like you watched him in The Office, and you're like, oh, okay, so he does light comedy. And then you watch him in other stuff, and every so often you still detect Jim Halpert.
Yeah.
Just because you've seen it so much. But he's quite good in it. I'll say the casting decision for his paramour is not quite as good, but there's a lot of stuff in the series to like. I like it. I recommend it.
You know, it's really interesting that you do immediately, when you ask the question, you immediately go to TV. It's still a golden age of television. It is still a place where I am now getting experiences from television that I used to only get from novels. I'm watching something that nobody else is watching that I think is absolutely terrific.
It's not legal.
Yeah, I know. It's called The Terror, and it's on AMC, and it's based on a novel by Dan Simmons. And Simmons has kind of lived in Stephen King's shadow. He's a novelist, kind of a horror novelist usually, and he writes, he's a better prose writer than Stephen King, but he's not as creative. He doesn't have that immediate, like, grab you by the lapels and drag you into the story. This is a book that he wrote that's about a kind of endurance-like exploration trip in the 19th century. British guys go out and they get stuck in the ice, like the Endurance. Except it's also kind of a monster movie. There's something out there and it's chasing them and they don't know what it is. But what elevates it, aside from the acting, which is spectacular, I mean, the acting is unbelievably good, but what elevates it is the relationship between the characters. Men in situations of authority, each one of them has something back in England that kind of links them to one another. It's simple, but it just brings you into this idea of the incredible burden of authority, the incredible burden of authority in the middle of nowhere, where every decision you make puts people's lives on the line. And you're dealing with the supernatural element kind of just elevates the presence of nature in it, so that you are just, when you turn it on for an hour, you are in the ice. You are in this place where it's always dark 6 months of the year. Something is out there, and it's terrific. I mean, it really is good. And the other one, just on a fun level, is this show, The Sinner, which just has a very basic premise, which is that they show you somebody commit a murder in the first 10 minutes of the show.
Did you watch the whole thing?
I've watched the first season, and I'm in the middle of the second season.
Oh, okay.
I'm coming to the end of the second season. And
Is the second season worth it? I mean, I watched the first season.
Yeah, no, I really like it. And Bill Pullman is doing this really eating the scenery performance, which you don't, as a neurotic cop who keeps saying, yeah, I know you did it, but why did you do it? And it's not what we think. And it's just an entertaining crime show.
You know, I'm interested in this idea of authority. Obviously, none of the five of us have ever been in situations where the stakes are life and death. None of us has ever worn any kind of authority where the decisions that we make could have that kind of. But one of the things that I've thought a lot about over the last year, as our company has grown and past the 50 employee mark, and you know, this kind of idea that Ben and I had, and this journey that started in a pool house with, you know, the three of us and some of our pals, and
We were doing business there.
Yeah. And I think now about the responsibilities that have come along with the growth of the company and what that means. And one of the sad things that I've learned about being in charge is that basically being in charge means that you pay an enormous price for every small mistake that you make.
Yeah,
and that other people pay a price for every small mistake that you make.
So I delegated all this stuff to you.
That's why the price you end up paying is much higher, because it's compounded, because if you're good, you actually care about the people that are paying the price because of your stupidity.
Right.
I'm watching Fortitude. Have you watched Fortitude?
No.
You love Fortitude. The way you describe this, it's Fortitude. It's who's the star of it? Not Costner. The crazy. He's got a crazy brother.
Dennis
Quaid. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you. We should be on Password together.
Yeah.
Crazy brother. Dennis Quaid. The first season, I think, is a little better than the second, but it's almost the same thing. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's filmed up by the North Pole. I talked to Dennis while he was shooting it a few weeks ago, and he said, "Hang on, I got to go outside." And he put the phone down a bit, and he's like, "Where's my gun?" And I said, "You need a gun?" And he said, "Polar bears are everywhere here." He said, "We just you don't go without a gun."
Wow.
It was amazing. So it really is this rough, nasty environment. And it starts out with, there's a thaw in the ice, and they find all these woolly mammoths that are down under the ice, but there's something that they don't know that's growing inside of them.
That's cool.
And it just goes, you don't know what's happening for a long, you can't figure out.
Dennis Quaid only comes in like a ways into the series, like season 2.
Second season. The other is I cannot wait for the premiere of The Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Really?
You guys, have you watched it?
No, I've been so off put because whenever I see a culturally, I just can't stand the Jews. And when I see a culturally Jewish show, I'm like, I'm going to watch a bunch of people who completely screw up Judaism.
This is brilliant. It's brilliant.
John Podhoretz is a huge fan of this show.
Oh my gosh, it is. It's well written, well produced, just expertly carried it every step of the way. It's got the time period down.
I was afraid of like a propaganda sucker punch when I watched the opening because it seemed like it was moving from 1950s happy housewife to empowered woman who decides to leave family behind kind of thing. Is that the dynamic?
No, it starts out that she is this uber housewife that it's just hysterical to watch because it's 1950s. It's a Mad Men time. And she will get up an hour before her husband to put on all of her makeup and then tuck herself back into sleep so she always looks great, okay? And she's perfect on everything. She's a overachiever on everything. And she's helping her husband, who is a horrible comedian. He's an ad guy, and he wants to be a comedian. She just thinks that it's something they're doing together. And she's helping him, write the jokes and everything else. And he's stealing jokes from Bob Newhart, okay? So she hears Bob Newhart on TV doing his routine, and she's like, honey, he stole it. He's like, no, I stole it. That's what we do. He goes and bombs. Then when she says, I thought you're not serious about leaving your job because you suck. She gets hammered one night, and she goes down to the comedy club for some reason, and she just wants to tell everybody off. She grabs the mic. She's hysterical. She's really, really great. So now she's just found this, but she's trying to balance her home life the way it's supposed to be. I think it's great. It's really funny.
A
really
good pal of mine is the love interest in season 2. So it'll be fun to see.
Really?
Yeah, it'll be fun to see how he does.
Yeah.
A buddy of I hate to talk about him because I don't ever want him to pay a price for anything
being
else.
Being a buddy of yours?
Being a buddy of mine.
As we've learned, actors being associated with any of us.
Yes.
Is
Bad move.
Just a terrible thing.
Can I ask you a question? Would you get together if I could? Because I've become I don't want to even say. I've become friends with people that have had interactions with all of us that have paid a heavy price, and I've talked to them. Would you do a show with me if I could get a couple of people who have paid a heavy price, just to get together and just tell the story as it happened, and just end this storyline?
I mean, I would love for that, considering that, legitimately, we have major celebrities who walk into this office who are not political on a regular basis. I mean, once a week probably.
Yeah.
And I will actively tell them that if you take a picture, you should not post it on your social media.
Right.
They will come and they will murder you. Just
I
don't do it.
People who don't even necessarily agree with the politics, but they appreciate
No, they just enjoy the showmanship and all that.
But I think we're at this place. I have one of them who, and it's not the one you would think. I have one of them that is, I think, willing to do this. It would nudge the other one into it.
That'd be great, because if it broke the dam a little bit, where people felt like they could say, "Oh yeah, I listened to Glenn," or "Oh yeah, I listened to Ben or Drew," or
not only that,
I don't know why they listen to Knowles.
I want to be who I want to. I want to be who I want to be, and I want to live in a country where I can think, and I can say, I just had a guest on for one of my podcasts last week. She was, Cassie J.
Yes.
Red Pill.
Mm-hmm.
She's great.
She's terrific. Yeah.
So we were talking, and she said 3 times, okay, I'm thinking out loud here, so I don't even know if this will work, and I don't know if I should say it. And I'm like, say it. That's the world we want to live in.
Right.
To where, you might say something that is stupid, and you're like, okay, I forget that. That's good.
Yeah.
We got to get back there.
Instead, we live in a world where Norm Macdonald, someone that each of us, the four of us, Glenn, if you're not a fan, you should be.
Five.
Good.
Love him.
The greatest book of the decade. Norm basically had his career threatened last week for saying, "I like my friends."
Yeah,
that's basically all they said.
Oh, I know.
I like my friends.
You know who I think is really pathetic in that story? Jimmy Fallon.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Jimmy
Absolutely
Fallon
pathetic.
let me say, for Jimmy Fallon to say there are producers at NBC who are crying about this, what is that? When I was on Jay Leno, this is 4 years ago. The only reason why I was on Leno is because one of the senior producers was a conservative and retiring. And he came out of the closet and he said, I want one guest myself. And he picked me. So we made this deal. It was at Christmas time. We made this deal. No politics. On my problem, no politics. We're going to talk about Christmas. That's all we're going to talk about. Let's just have fun. It went back and forth through negotiations. We made the agreement. He comes in. We're in the green room. We had flown out to do this, sitting there in the green room. And he comes in and he said, they've changed the deal. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you're going to get out there. I've seen all the questions. They're going to sandbag you. And I said, no, they're not, because I'm not going on. And Jay Leno comes in. And Jay is a nice guy. You guys know Jay? Yeah. A really nice guy. And he says, Glenn, look, they're killing me. The producers are all killing me. I got to ask a couple of questions. I said, Jay, that wasn't the deal. No. He said, Glenn, we have to do it. And I looked at my staff and I said, guys, call the pilots, fire up the jets, let's go. And we started to walk out. They panicked. Okay. We go and do the show. What they had done is they had written, I was standing backstage, Jay's doing the monologue, and I can see the prompter. Written in the prompter, we got this, oh, we got Glenn Beck. I got 3 standing ovations, okay? 3 on The Tonight Show. As they say that, the first time everybody's like, yeah, not a boo. I had 3 standing ovations. In the prompter, it says, whoa, I hear some boos out there. Yeah, I know, he's pretty controversial. It's crazy.
Wow.
It's crazy what they're doing.
Well, they did, when I was on Mara's show, like a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So every pre-interview on Mara's show was, you guys are going to talk about freedom of speech and freedom on college campuses, and we're going to talk about, and they did at least 4 pre-interviews, right, to make sure that I wasn't a kook. And so we finally get there, and it's the night of the interview, and it's like a 15-minute interview, and then I got to leave because right before Sabbath. And the producer comes in, he says, Bill wants to ask you about Russia. And I said, well, why? I mean, I do this for a living, so fine. I mean, if he wants to, he can, but I'm not sure why that's interesting. He said, well, no, we just decided that it would be more interesting if you guys talked about Russia. And I thought to myself, well, this is a perfect example of how the left deliberately avoids any informational exchange that doesn't involve some sort of adversarial response. Because Mar and I agree on the free speech issues. I've quoted him on my show. I've played his audio. We agree on the campus stuff. We agree on the censorship stuff. But instead of signifying any of that, the producers decided, we have to show that there's a contrast between Bill and Ben, and so we're going to talk about Russian conspiracy theories for the entire 10, 15 minutes. It's just amazing.
I've said no to him over and over. We're supposed to do him in a couple of weeks, and I'm torn on it because of that. I've always said
he's the one guy who actually I have respect for him.
I do too.
I almost disagree.
There's lots of times.
And I got along with him when we were on the set, even though he was doing that. I only saw him literally when we were on the set. But if you're willing to walk out, then it makes it very difficult for them to ask the questions. It was just, there's no place for me to go.
Right. But here's the point. The reason why I've always said no to that is, Bill, you're doing, the Roman Colosseum. No matter what you say, unless you come out against the liberal side, which he occasionally does, your crowd automatically cheers.
He has a kind of disdain for them, though, when they do that.
He does. Mar and I respect him for that.
Part of his. I think one of the reasons that Norm Macdonald makes producers at NBC cry, it's actually a trick on the right, too, with a guy like Norm, is that it's very easy to take someone whose talent you admire very much and then superimpose your own values onto them.
Yeah.
So Norm Macdonald isn't a right-winger, but he's sort of beloved by right-wingers because he isn't a left-winger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the same way that we may be overly anxious to grab him up just because he's not a creature of the left, I suspect he's the favorite comedian among comedians. And so in this comedy culture over at NBC, with these producers, I'm sure they do the same thing.
But this
they
is
like his
by
jokes,
the way,
so
I'll
they
bet this
assume
is-
that he's
It's
them.
I
not
would
too
bet
much
money-
to ask, though. It's not too much to ask that your comedian doesn't kick you in the teeth, or at least that every comedian doesn't kick you
But
in the teeth. So that does make no
I also think this is a bunch of crap. I think the idea that the producers were in tears in the back room, I think this is a bunch of nonsense. I think that's an excuse that Fallon was using so that he didn't have to have him on. Or, here's the bottom line. You know, there are at least 3 of us in this room who run companies, right? And if somebody who's a low-level staffer had a problem with a guest that we were bringing in, we'd hear the concerns, and then we would make a call as the executives of the company as to whether that would actually impede the guest. It's not Fallon, sloughing it off on his producers, like, oh, they were just so emotional. I'm sorry, I can't have you on. Since when has anyone in Hollywood given 3 craps about a low-level producer what they think? They're raping these people. Why would they? Like in their off hours, they're hitting the button on the desk and they're shutting the door so that they can sexually molest these people.
Maybe that's why they were crying in the hallway.
Right.
They've just been raped.
And then it's like, oh, well, no, they were crying about Norm Macdonald. Okay, so Norm Macdonald you're crying about, but you were fine when NBC was stifling stories about Harvey Weinstein. Then it was totally okay. When they're trying to shut down Ronan Farrow, then that wasn't a big deal. But now the producer,
But I do agree
now
with
you
Glenn
really
that they
care
were
what the
crying.
producers
I'm
think.
sure they were crying.
I'm sure they were.
I'm sure
Because
they
having
were.
been in those rooms, with some of these people at any of the studios, they are lunatics.
Yeah.
I think people don't appreciate how absolutely insane, in a different way than the rest of corporate America, how out of their minds Hollywood producers are, and assistant producers and casting directors, and they are. I mean,
This is
some of
coming
them
from
I
a
like.
guy in a velvet jacket and a
I know.
red, white, and
These
blue
guys
bow
He
tie.
carries his headshot. Yeah, that's right. He goes to Starbucks.
It takes one
If
to
any
know
casting
one.
directors are watching, hey, go to the guy.
But it
Not
is
you.
true that
I didn't
Not
mean
you, I'm
yeah,
not talking about you.
it is true. I mean, Drew's been way more pitch meetings than I have, but I've been in pitch meetings as well. And if politics come up, it starts to get so fraught so quickly. It's in an insane
and
way.
They depend, it is a form of bullying because they depend. They know you're there to sell, and they depend on you sitting there with a grin on. I won't describe what kind of grin.
bleep
but
eating grin. We all know what you're
bleep-eating
saying,
Grin,
yeah.
grin on your face. And
I'm
when you
telling-
don't do that, and
I'm telling you, read. I know you all have. The audience needs to read the Righteous Mind.
Yeah.
I have put that into practice. I was at Netflix and Amazon. I was in a meeting the last time I was here, 2 times ago. I was here. I'm in a meeting, and it, honest to God, starts like this. They come in, and this woman walks in, and she sees everybody, and then she sees me, and she stops. And she knows she's going into a meeting with me, but she's so, I hate that guy. Immediately, she just stops and just walks. And one of my agents happens to know her. And as she's starting to sit down, he immediately reaches out and says, I know what you're thinking right now. Give him 20 minutes. Just listen for 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, using, and it's not being deceptive, it's not changing your opinion, it's nothing. It's using Jonathan Haidt's tactics, if you will, his language. In 20 minutes, honest to God, she was laughing with me. She said, can we get a picture? I want to send it to my dad. My dad and I haven't talked since the election, and I don't know how to talk to him. Maybe this would break the ice. Do you have any tips on how to talk?
But I mean, if I can, you are Glenn Beck. You are representative of a point of view. If you're an actor who's just representative of the fact that I can play that part, or a storyteller who just says, I can tell tales, when your politics come out, there's no time for that. You're done.
Yeah, no, I know.
It is. I mean,
That's different.
I've been on stages. I've been on sets with, pretty big actors.
Certain clubs.
Certain clubs. Certain clubs down by the, and when politics comes up, I've always kept my mouth shut. Back when I worked as an actor, I would keep my mouth shut because the minute when it came out, I remember this with the blank book. Yeah, I did the blank book, and everyone knew I was a Republican, and my phone stopped ringing. It really did stop ringing, and not that I was Brad Pitt, but I was working, and it just stopped. And it's because there's not even a pick up the phone. Hey, are you the same person that I knew 2 weeks ago?
Oh no,
it's
I
just,
was.
You're
This
dead.
is this scenario
because I can't keep my mouth shut. I'm just not capable of doing it because I don't It's an insult to me.
right.
It's an insult to me for them to assume that I agree with the fact that they're insulting somebody that I voted for, that I may support. I'm incredibly polite to everyone but you. I mean, no, I am.
He doesn't deserve it.
No, of course I know, but I am, and I'm a very polite person. But I would always say, I'm on the other side of that question, and it's like, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
So I've been wondering the whole conversation, and this is half serious. Is one of your cameramen wearing a mask to hide his identity, or is it the smoke? Because
Yes, the answer is yes.
Yes. When I was here last
we don't
time,
know because we haven't seen him. So.
when I was here last time, or whenever, we were shooting some stuff. We were shooting stuff over here, and remember we had extra crew that came in, okay? And then I was shooting stuff over at Premiere for my studios. And we had 2 different crews. My last day over on radio, it's Friday, one of the guys who was on the crew started to laugh. He's looking at his phone, he starts to laugh. And he says, "You're not gonna believe this." And I said, "What?" He said, "Look at this, I just got a picture from one of my best friends. And it says, 'Do not forward this to anyone, tell no one. I waited until the last day to show you. Guess who I've been hanging out with?'" And shows him a picture, and it's me and one of the cameramen.
No.
Okay, from here.
Really?
Yes. And he said, and I said, "Does he know about you?" And he's like, "Oh dear God, no." And I said, "Come on, let's take a picture." So he took a picture and sent it with the same thing. "Do not pass this to anyone." And I said, here's 2 friends. You're both kind of fans. You're doing something all week. You're not willing to share that. And he said, "Glenn, we would never work again."
Yeah, and that's why I never bring up my close friendship with Anne Hathaway. I never talk about it, or Meryl Streep, or Kathy Griffin, we never use this to our advantage. We never torpedo other people's careers.
That's right.
That's really what we've got to start doing.
So we're not going to talk about what shows we're liking because we've exhausted that portion.
I don't really like any shows, so
Yeah.
fair enough.
And I like everything. But we are going to take some more questions because people have paid their $10 and they must have their due. Alicia, are you with us?
Yes, and I would highly encourage all of you to watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I'm a fan, and Tony Shalhoub is like amazing as
he
a
is
father.
brilliant in
He
this.
is. It brought me back. My mom and I used to watch every single episode of Monk together, and I texted her when I watched the show, and I was like, "You have to watch it just for his character because he's so amazing on
More
that
of a
show."
Wings fan, but
So
yeah.
I will tell you, everything else that he's ever done, Monk stuff, it's good. Not compared to this.
Yeah.
This is
Really?
he is brilliant.
He's so good, and I'm excited for season 2 coming soon.
Yeah.
Matthew wants to know, how often do we get into theological debates here at the Daily Wire office? He thinks it's really cool how there are so many religious perspectives here at Daily Wire, but he's Catholic, so for the first time ever, he's a subscriber that assumes that Michael is always right and wins
Oh,
those.
about that. We got the one. We found him.
Unfortunately, it's also the Pope, so he has some weird things to say about it.
What do you think of
It is
Let's
talk
have a
about
theological debate. What do you think of the Pope?
I know.
Go.
It's funny. People ask me this all the time. What do you think your church is falling apart? These cardinals and the Pope, and I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. I've been hoping for this.
For
to happen
once, we
years.
agree.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful because the Pope. It has been so corrupt in that hierarchy for so long. I mean, building for so long, and certainly throughout this pontificate, there has been so much corruption. There's been so much confusion, doctrinal confusion, upending millennia of Catholic doctrine. I want it to be all aired out. I want to kick out all the bad cardinals, all the bad bishops, get rid of them.
This is how you know that he's a Catholic, because Catholics are like Yankees fans. Like something bad happens,
I'm a
they're like,
Yankee
well,
fan, too.
next year, even this year, we'll probably come back and we'll just buy a couple of guys from the Cubs. That'll be it. And being a Jew is like being a White Sox fan, which is why I'm both. And it's like, no matter what happens, we won the World Series last year. Don't worry, we'll suck next year. It doesn't matter.
There is a weird timeline thing, which is every 500 years the Catholic Church falls apart. The fall of Rome, the Great Schism with the East, the Protestant Revolution, and this now. And this is even worse because it's really doctrinal. It's affecting it's gone all the way up to the Vatican. But I'm bringing the fresh air, bringing the light. It's very disinfecting.
I was there by invitation for the last big cardinal thing and it was.
Did you elect this Pope? Did you do this?
No, this is before this Pope. It was right before, what was the last Pope's name?
Benedict.
Right before he came in. And so I was with a lot of the cardinals at some of these really weird, like movie-esque kind of meetings and thing. And there are 2 churches, you know, and it is plain as day. When you're seeing those guys interact, they run in the same circles, and you can see there is one political group that it's all about power and politics, and then there's the ones who really have a soft heart. What I haven't understood was, I was told that this was Benedict's attempt to make sure that it was set, the course was set for a long time, and then all of a sudden, you know, the media's favorite pope is elected, and I've had I'm not Catholic, I'm a former Catholic, but you know, I've had real problems with him. He's a Jesuit, first place.
That was the first mistake.
Yeah, which Kavanaugh, by the way, teaches at a Jesuit school, which makes me question
Georgetown
him.
Prep, Jesuit high school.
Yeah, so I mean that's weird because that's not necessarily a good thing. But what happened? How?
If you want to figure out where to fall on an issue, if the media supports something, you should.
No, I know
it,
that.
You know?
But what happened to Benedict was supposedly setting it up, and then all of a sudden it's a strong U-turn.
Benedict is one of the greatest men of this century and the last century. He was certainly one of the most brilliant theologians. The Regensburg Address, the Regensburg Lecture, is one of the most important orations in modern history. And then he left. Why did he leave? We don't know why he left. It was the first resignation in hundreds and hundreds of years. Now we have what would be the first really properly Vatican II Pope, post-Vatican II Pope. And we're seeing some of the implications of that change, doctrinally, temperamentally, pastorally, going on and on and on. But it is funny because the media say, oh, how lovey-dovey, how wonderful, we love this Pope, approval ratings at 90%, and yet Archbishop Vigano, the one who accused the Pope of covering up for certain cardinals, that's a serious man who speak of credibility. That guy has a lot of credibility, and you're seeing a lot of rot in there. A lot of these cardinals, McCarrick,
So what about this? The last 2 popes were actually 2 of my heroes as a non-Catholic.
Of course.
John Paul II, obviously, great man.
right.
Benedict, I agree with you,
terrific.
one of the greatest minds of our time. But all of this stuff was going on under their watch. What were they doing?
Benedict was defrocking a lot of popes, laicizing them, sending them into seclusion, punishing McCarrick, and yet under the pontificate of Francis, Cardinal McCarrick, one of the worst of these guys, was all of a sudden back in public again, living in seminaries again. You have to speak of the political side of it.
Yeah.
You know, we want our Pope to be wise as a serpent and innocent as a dove. We don't want that to get inverted. And if there are political machinations going on, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that when certain cardinals and bishops are playing nice on TV and how compassionate and nice, those guys might have a lot of skeletons in their closet. And it really juxtaposes love, true faith, true hope, with sentimentality. And we now have a church largely of sentimentality.
Can I ask you one more question? I have a good friend who's deep Catholic. In Silicon Valley, nobody knows he's like very religious and conservative. He's like, they're gonna
it's like
kill
the
me
episode
one
of
of
Silicon
these
Valley.
Right.
And
Yeah,
like Judge
the worst thing you can be as a Christian.
He's very concerned about this Pope, has been for a while, because of what this Pope is doing in China, where he's giving the communist bishops, their due, outing the underground church, and he's playing footsie with Russia, and
allowing the Chinese to say what they want to do what they want with the bishops, saying that these churches don't have to have a cross, a crucifix in them, the symbol of redemption. The hope here also with this Pope is he's made flippant comments. With respect to Vigano's testimony, he said, "Oh, I'm not going to say a word about it." Then he said some words about it. But he's been dismissive of a lot of criticisms and questions. Even serious cardinals, Cardinal Burke, have sent dubia, questions to the Pope on doctrine. He won't respond. He'll ignore them. And he's been dismissive, especially of young Catholics who are much more traditional, much more liturgically serious, who want an older, more sober church. And he said they're too rigid. Homilies shouldn't be more than 8 minutes. The whole Mass should be 40 minutes. Depends on who's giving the homily. And the thing with the baby boomers is they've always got to be the cool guys in the room. They've always got to be the young, hip, cool guys. And there is a generation now, generation that's coming up, which is returning.
And this is where, to get back to the base question, which is how much do we discuss theology?
Yeah.
The truth is, on most of the key questions, putting aside the doctrinal matters, on most of the key questions of values, we're all on the same page. So we have a lot of discussions about that, but usually it's in contrast with kind of the secularizing society and influences from the outside, because all of us, I think, can say that we are duly frustrated with the elements of our own religious sectors that are attempting to liberalize and destroy the eternal doctrines of our faith. I mean, I know that in the Jewish community, this is always a challenge, and it's a great annoyance. The number one question I get asked, actually, is, you're so conservative, why are there so many liberal Jews? And my answer is because the vast majority of liberal Jews don't actually abide by any actual dictates of Judaism, and you're seeing the same thing in the Catholic Church. The future of the Catholic Church is in going back to principles that actually matter. The future of Protestantism, mainline Protestantism is declining. Evangelical Protestantism has been picking up where all of that slack is, and the reason for that is because if you're going to get me to go sit in a boring room for 2 hours, there better be something I'm hearing that's worth it, because I could be going out doing something fun, right? So it better be something worthwhile that actually has some sort of transcendental value, not, oh, you're going to bring in pizza and a guitar, and now I'm going to feel special about things.
This place is pretty amazing for its religious conversations. I mean, Jeremy is a pastor, and kind of a radical pastor. And I call you an antinomianism.
And I say I'm not against the law. The law's against
the
me.
law's against you. And Knowles is a genuinely informed Catholic, and J.A. is a very J.A. and Knowles have been fighting the Reformation. I mean, really,
well,
I feel like I'm.
Bellock's books.
I know.
And so I read Bellock, and now, I'm going to go fight a crusade.
No, I sometimes feel like I'm going to negotiate the Treaty of Westphalia between these two.
And we're going to win it this time, damn it.
Can I tell you something? When Tommy Lahren was working at the Blaze, it was just like this.
Alicia, give us a question.
Moving right along.
How
We have
many
another
times
question
did you say,
from-
oh, and then he gave me Belloc? I got her to read it all on Twitter.
Next question comes from Matthew that wants to know, has politics always been like this?
The what?
Like
Has
this, has
politics always been like this?
Well,
Yeah.
it's been a lot worse. I mean, there was a civil war where we killed several 100,000 of each other.
It was a bad day.
The 30 Years War.
The election between Jefferson and Adams is my favorite.
Is the worst. It is the worst.
However, Jefferson called Adams a hermaphrodite, and Adams said that if you elect Thomas Jefferson, there will be blood in the streets, and your daughters will be raped, and your children's heads will be on pikes.
But it was, at the end, you got either Jefferson or Adams. When we had Hillary Clinton running against Donald Trump,
my
it
God.
felt like one of those Japanese horror movies where, like, Gorgo is fighting Godzilla. It doesn't matter who wins, the city is gone.
Even on that point of the founding era, because I do are we too obsessed with sex? We're always just talking about sex. There was that great quote from John Adams, our second president, about Alexander Hamilton, that there weren't enough whores in Philadelphia to contain his secretions. That's a line,
It's pretty spectacular.
It's a little Stormy
Who was
Daniels.
it? Was it Taft, or who was it? It was in Rochester, where they were where he had fathered an illegitimate child from. I don't remember,
Yeah,
Grover
that's right.
Cleveland
Yeah,
or something. and
Taft or Grover Cleveland?
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
I think it was Cleveland. I mean, this has been going on.
Taft wasn't able to participate in such hijinks.
Hard to maneuver,
Yeah.
But Cleveland's whole second run at the presidency was built on this question, right? That he had You know who did a great piece on that was Glenn Beck.
You know that.
I love
You
him.
made a
Have you
terrific
heard about his new book?
Addicted to
Available
Outrage.
at bookstores everywhere.
No, you did. In all sincerity, you did a video a few years ago about Cleveland and
Yeah.
the sex scandal, which I stumbled upon and really quite enjoyed.
Yeah.
We have time for one last question, and then we will end today's discussion by asking Ben Shapiro to tell us what the heck is Yom Kippur.
William wants to know, dear legends, this is a question that has been on his mind quite a lot recently. He wants to know what all y'all's positions are on free will versus determinism. And I have to say that, William, I love you as a subscriber because he actually said all y'all's.
This will take just a couple minutes, right?
I'm going to speak to this for a brief moment because the question of free will versus determinism is one of obviously the most important philosophical questions, one of the most important theological questions. We argue about it continually in this office. Mr. Musk. Mr. Musk.
I thought we were going to talk. No, this is medicine. This is medicine in California. This is all medical. All medical.
How did I not notice that? Where did you get that?
I got to get this back on the plane.
I've actually had a thought about this free will versus determinism thing that this week, and it's related to how we approach politics. So for that reason, I want to share it. I think that we've turned politics into something of a religion at the moment. It's not for the first time. And I think that the problem with the religion we've created is it goes to this free will versus determinism question, that we basically have decided that we manifest reality instead of God manifesting reality. It doesn't matter, you might believe in God and you might pay lip service to saying he manifests reality, but when you engage politically, you act as though you do. And for that reason, we wind up being these very tribal, very outraged moments because we can't fully understand the life of even one person. Like it takes 800, however old Klavan is, many years, and
Not that long.
and the full power of your mind to even try to unlock your perspective on the world. And it would take equal amount for you then to try to understand Glenn's. And so we look at history, which is the movement of thousands of people across thousands of years, and we sort of reduce it all down to something that we can understand, and we put a line around it. And sometimes that line is a great man. Like if we look at the Revolution, George Washington might be the line that we draw around it because a reduced version of his experience kind of forms the contour. But obviously, if you died at Yorktown, you didn't experience America. You never once lived in America as a nation completely free of British rule. If you died at Iwo Jima, you didn't experience VJ Day, right? You didn't have that experience. So the truth is, for the person who dies at Yorktown, that's it. Mm-hmm. That's all they got, and they're so whatever value they got out of life, whatever meaning they got out of life, can't be based on these questions of what are we collectively creating. It has to be the individual experience going through the individual life. And when we get so riled up about politics, when we get so riled up about these divisions, and we begin to hate other individuals on the basis of these sort of forces that we dream that we're swept up in, but that actually have almost no, I voted for whoever in California, and what's it matter? I'm a Republican, I voted in California, I voted for Trump, who cares? But we place all that value in ourselves as though we're God, as though we're creating the world. And I think the result is that we're missing out on the actual value of the human experience. We're missing out on the actual, and doing less good. Because to whatever extent we are being used by God to affect the world around us, it's not on the basis of our delusions of grandeur. It's on the basis of how we interact with self, how we interact with each other, and how we interact with God.
You know, when I heard, stop, would you stop that?
That is so deep, man. That is so deep.
Let me hit that, brother.
You know, I thought Alicia said to comment on the difference between free will and feminism, and I was going to say we have to choose one.
Alicia, thank you, and thanks to all of our Daily Wire subscribers. Please give us more money. We promise to provide you with some value beyond what you've experienced here. You can get all full episodes of our daily podcast and the Leftist Tears Hot or Cold Tumblr. Ben, I wasn't kidding. I really feel like tomorrow's a big day.
Tonight,
Tonight,
in about an hour and a half, I'll be
will.
in synagogue. Yeah, exactly. That's why we're cutting off early, guys. So thank me for that one. So the Yom Kippur is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. It's the day that basically the last 40 days have been leading up to. So about a month before Rosh Hashanah, you start, it's known as kind of the days of penitence, and you start saying extra prayers in the morning for repentance. And then between Rosh Hashanah, the idea in Rosh Hashanah at the beginning of the year is that God basically opens the book when he's going to decide how your next year is going to go, whether you live or whether you die, how you're going to die if you do. And then on Yom Kippur, the book is sealed. And that's when God has made his final decision. So this is basically us getting in our last minute prayers, is saying what we're intending on doing. It's not just New Year's resolutions. You have to specifically atone for the things that you've done wrong in the last year. Mm-hmm. You are not allowed to atone before God unless you've actually said sorry to other human beings for the things that you've done to them. Since I had a perfect year, I don't have to do that.
I didn't get my phone call from you yet.
Yeah, exactly. but the rule is that you actually are not allowed to, but for sins that you committed against another human being, you can't ask God for forgiveness for those sins until you've actually atoned with that other human being. Mm-hmm. And so we fast and we pray and we wear white. We're not allowed to wear leather, for example. because that kind of is indicative of the human body. The idea is you're supposed to imitate the angels as much as you possibly can. And it can be a really uplifting day because it's basically you pouring out your heart to God. And then at the end, if you've ever been to a Ne'ilah service, which is the very end of the Yom Kippur holiday, everybody stands for essentially about an hour and a half. You don't blow the shofar, which is you see in all the ancient movies, the Jews blowing the shofar, the horn. We've been doing that for days, did on Rosh Hashanah as well. On Yom Kippur, you don't blow it except at the very end. It's really dramatic. And that's the idea of Ne'ilah is the gates to heaven are closing. And so get it in while it's still good. So it's a very pressure-packed day. I mean, people take it extremely seriously. You basically spend all day in synagogue atoning. And also, the nice thing is that you're recognizing that God is not just a God of justice, he's a God of mercy, because God knows better than you that you are going to make a bunch of resolutions about how you're going to act next year, and then you're totally going to blow it. But the question that God is asking is, are you sincere in the moment? Is this something that you, in the moment, it's credible to believe that you're going to try and carry that forward through the rest of the year? So it's really an amazing day. Like it's actually my dad's favorite day of the year, even though we're fasting. He said specifically because we're fasting, because the way he sees it is this optimistic moment. I actually, as a human being, get to stand before the creator of all things and say, and he cares enough about me that he wants my atonement. It's an amazing concept.
Well, what better note to end on than that God is a God of mercy? I think that sort of wraps up the full discussion of the night, and it's certainly something that whatever hope we have, we better hang it on that. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. This is the Daily Wire Backstage. We promise to do it again. Glenn, thanks for sitting in with us.
Thank you.
And hope you'll join us again.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I mean, I didn't enjoy Michael's part.
Nah.
Everybody else.
No one does.